In the German alphabet, I is a consonant letter that evolved as a ligature of long S and Z, and long S over round S. Like double S, when speaking it is pronounced, S. In standard spelling, it is used only after long vowels and diphthongs, while SS is written after short vowels. Its German name is Eszett or scharfes. In English it is often called ʔɛs଼t. While the letter I has been used in other languages, today it is only used in German. However, it is not used in all German-speaking countries, in particular not in Switzerland, Liechtenstein and Namibia. German speakers in Germany, Austria, Belgium, Denmark, Luxembourg and South Tyrol, Italy follow the standard rules for I. History. The earliest occurrence of I is in the Wolf-Dietrich fragment, which was written around 1300 AD. In black letter texts it was used as a ligature of long s and small z, more precisely called z with lower loop. In some of the fonts emerging in the 15th century, it was a ligature of long s and round s. By the time Ansiker for German texts began to be applied, the development of the language and use of I had changed again. There remains no clear clarification of the origin of the letter I to this day. Roman typeface. In the late 18th and early 19th century, when more and more German texts were printed in Roman type, typesetters looked for a Roman counterpart for the black letter angstrom Z ligature, which did not exist in Roman fonts. Printers experimented with various techniques, mostly replacing black letter I in Roman type with either es-zed, ss, angstrom s, or some combination of these. Although there are early examples in Roman type of angstrom s ligature that looks like the letter I, it was not commonly used as Eszett. It was only with the first orthographic conference in Berlin in 1876 that printers and type foundries started to look for a common letter form to represent the Eszett in Roman type. In 1879, a proposal for various letter forms was published in the journal Verwandtkultur Buchdrucker Kunst. A committee of the Typographic Society of Leipzig chose the so-called Sulzbacher form. In 1903 it was proclaimed as the new standard for the Eszett in Roman type. Since then, German printing set in Roman type has used the letter I. The Sulzbacher form, however, did not find unanimous acceptance. It became the default form, but many type designers preferred other forms. Some resemble a black letter es-zed ligature, others more a Roman angstrom s ligature. To the reader unfamiliar with German, the I's s origin may be obscure or nearly undetectable, particularly in the Sulzbacher form. Long s itself was frequently confused with f, which led to its demise in English writing around 1800. Unlike German, I per se has apparently never been used in English. Rather, various other forms are seen for ss in pre-modern literature and handwriting. A double long s, angstrom is seen in places such as scans of the original Geneva Bible of 1560. Scans of British census sheets of the 19th century may show a simple unligatured long s short s or something that looks to the modern eye as a long ascended p. Where the latter case is seen, the pre-modern English handwritten p differs from its angstrom s generally both by the p's shorter ascender as well as the p's bold being drawn with a space left at the bottom versus the s of the angstrom s being drawn in more completely at the bottom. Adelung's and Hayes's rules. Johann Christoph Adelung and Johann Christian August Hayes were two German lexicographers who tried to establish consistent rules on the application of the letter S. In Austria, Hayes's rule of 1829 prevailed from 1879 until the Second Orthographic Conference of 1901, where it was decided to prefer Adelung's rule over Hayes's. The German orthography reform of 1996 reintroduced Hayes's variant, yet without the long s. In order to display its elements correctly, the ligatures of the fractal typesetting are not shown. Therefore the modern antiqua was used for the Latin orthography since the 20th century. Hayes's argument, given that ss may appear at the end of a word, before a fugue and s being a common initial letter for words, sss is likely to appear in a large number of cases together. Critics point out that a triple s in words like misstand feature less readability than spelling it ʔɛsť. Even though the second word of a compound does not start with s, I should be used to improve the readability of the fugue, which suggests the unrelated word messer, and messenger over messenger, which suggests the unrelated word messing. This problem of Adelung's rule was solved by Hayes, who distinguished between the long s and the round s. Only the round s could finish a word, therefore called terminal s. The round s also indicates the fugue in compounds. Instead of misstand and mesergebnize, one wrote meerzart and mesergebnize. Back then a special ligature for Hayes's rule was introduced, angstrom s. Amongst the common ligatures of ff, ft, angstrom and angstrom t, angstrom s, and angstrom e were two different characters in the fractal type setting if applying Hayes's rule. Alternative representations in Antica. There have been 4 typographical forms of the Antica I. Currently, most Antica I are shaped according to the second or the fourth form. The first and third form are seldom found. Letter combination angstrom s, ligature of angstrom and s, ligature of angstrom and a kind of black letter z that looks similar to an e, or a 3, though it might rather be described as a z with a hook, the Salzbacher form. Current usage in German. Since the German spelling reform of 1996, both I and ss are used to represent between two vowels as follows: I is used after diphthongs, I is used after long vowels, ss is used after short vowels, thus it helps to distinguish words like bipenance, fine and buses. It is also consistent with the general rule of German spelling that a doubled consonant letter serves to mark the preceding vowel as short. Note that in words where the stem changes, some forms may have an I but others an ss, for instance Siberian versus Sibison. The same rules apply at the end of a word or syllable, but are complicated by the fact that single s is also pronounced in those positions. Thus, words like grow require I, while others, like gras, use a single s. The correct spelling is not predictable out of context, but is usually made clear by related forms, for example, gra paragraph and grassen, where the medial consonants are pronounced and respectively. Many dialects of German however have an even longer vowel, or an audibly less sharp s, in cases single s is used. Usage before the spelling reform of 1996. Before the 1996 spelling reform, I was always used at the end of a word or word component, or before a consonant, even when the preceding vowel was short. For example, fue has a long vowel, pronounced, and so was unaffected by the spelling reform. But qa has a short vowel, pronounced, and was reformed to kus. Other pre-1996 examples included ʔɛs't and weirig, but was a. The spelling reform affected some German-language forms of foreign place names, such as Rueland, now Russland, and Breaberg, now Pressburg. The orthography of personal names and of names for locations within Germany proper, Austria and Switzerland were not affected by the reform of 1996, however. These names often use irregular spellings that are otherwise impermissible under German spelling rules, not only in the matter of the I but also in many other respects. The pre-1996 orthography encouraged the use of es-zed in place of I in words with all letters capitalized where a usual ss would produce an ambiguous result. One possible ambiguity was between in Massen and in Massen. Such cases were rare enough that this rule was officially abandoned. The German military still occasionally uses the capitalized es-zed, even without any possible ambiguity, as ʔɛs't. Architectural drawings may also use es-zed in capitalizations because capital letters in both Maya and Masse are frequently used. Military teleprinter operation within Germany still uses es-zed for I. Substitution and all caps. If no I is available, ss or es-zed is used instead. This applies especially to all caps or small caps texts because I does not have a generally accepted majuscule form. Accepted are all caps names in legal documents. They may retain an I to prevent ambiguity, for example, Hans Strauer. This ss that replaces an I had to be hyphenated as a single letter before the 1996 reform. For instance strasse. Compare strai. After the reform, it was hyphenated like other double consonants, strasa. Switzerland and Liechtenstein. In Switzerland, ss usually replaces every I. This is officially sanctioned by the German orthography rules, which state in A section 25 E2, In der Schweiz kann man immer Euro sa Euro a schreiben. Liechtenstein follows the same practice. In Switzerland, I has been gradually abolished since the 1930s, when most cantons decided not to teach it anymore and the Swiss Postal Service stopped using it in place names. The Nasar 1/4 Chelzeitung was the last Swiss newspaper to give up I, in 1974. Today, Swiss publishing houses use I only for books that address the entire German-speaking market. Uppercase I is nearly unique among the letters of Latin alphabet in that it had no traditional uppercase form. This is because it never occurs initially, and traditional German printing in black letter never used all caps. However, there have been repeated attempts to introduce an uppercase I. Such letter forms can be found in some older German books and some modern signage and product design. Since April 4, 2008, Unicode 5.1.0 has included it as U+1E9E Latin capital letter ʔɛsť, graphically similar letters, lowercase beta. I should not be confused with the unrelated lowercase Greek letter I², a homoglyph, which the so-called Sulzbacher form closely resembles, particularly to the eyes of non-German or non-Greek readers. Any typeset material should use the I. Where that letter is unavailable, the substitution of I to SS is correct, and clearly preferable to the use of Greek I². The differences between I and I² in most typefaces are, I² reaches below the line while I does not. I² connects the vertical part on the left with the end of the horizontal near the bottom. I does not. I² is often slightly slanted to the right even in upright fonts, while I is exactly vertical. However, the reverse substitution of using German I as a surrogate for Greek I² once was common when describing beta test versions of application programs for older operating systems, whose character encodings, most notably Latin 1 and Windows 1252, did not support easy use of Greek letters. Also, the original IBM DOS code page, CP437, conflates the two characters, assigning them the same code point and a glyph that minimizes their differences. Uppercase B. Non-German speakers unfamiliar with German orthography may also confuse I with B, which is also incorrect. This effect is used for comic value in the film National Lampoon's European Vacation, where Clark Griswold reads a sign for Diplostrab as Diplostrab. Keyboards. In Germany and Austria, the letter I is present on computer and typewriter keyboards, normally to the right on the upper row. In other countries, the letter is not marked on the keyboard, but a combination of other keys can produce it. Often, the letter is input using a modifier and the S key. The details of the keyboard layout depend on the input language and operating system. OS, Option plus S on US, US Extended, and UK keyboards, Microsoft Windows, Alt plus 0223 or Alt plus 225 or CTRL plus S or CTRL plus Alt plus S, on some keyboards such as US International, also Alt GR plus S, X-based systems, Alt GR plus S or Compose, S, GNU Emacs, CX8S, GNOME, Alt GR plus S or CTRL Shift DF or CTRL Shift U, DF, Amiga OS, Alt plus S for all key maps on native Amiga keyboards. Plan 9, Alt or Compose, S. RISC OS, Alt plus S or Alt GR plus S, Android, Alt plus S, the Vim and GNU screen digraph is SS. Other languages, I is used by some in romanizing the Sumerian language, to mean sh. Some Sumerian scholars use es-zed or dollar instead. It was also in use for Latin during the medieval and Renaissance time, until the 18th century. For example, clarissimus, clarissimus, the brightest. sse, to be. ʔɛs't, ʔɛsít, and so on. I was used to mean angstrom in a German-influenced spelling system for the Lithuanian language which was used in Lithuania Minor in East Prussia. The page section Prussian Lithuanians personal names has some examples of Prussian Lithuanian surnames containing I. Miscellaneous. In alphabetizing German words, the collation rules say to treat I as a double S. Thus, Ruhe Russ Ruin Russland. In word processing contexts, I is sometimes associated with the umlaut, for a purely practical reason. Both I and the umlauted a currency, a paragraph, a 1/4 are not in ASCII. Thus they tend to cause the same kinds of problems in all sorts of legacy digital text processing applications. Historically, the development of I is not related to the umlaut, and they are not associated outside of character encoding contexts. I is sometimes used in German writing to indicate a pronunciation of where would otherwise be usual. The novels New Land and Ost Wind by Lucian Leitch, for example, use an initial to approximate the local dialect in Frankfurt. Thus NDE, the HTML entity for IS and es-zed. Its code point in the ISO 8859 character encoding versions 1, 2, 3, 4, 9, 10, 13, 14, 15, 16 and identically in Unicode is 223, or DF in hexadecimal. In text and latex, \SS produces I. A German language support package for latex exists in which I is produced by S. Also, I is widely not considered part of the standard alphabet. If asked how many letters in the alphabet, most Germans would answer 26 instead of 30. Sometimes even 29 may be heard, if it is forgotten that the dots of a currency are an old E placed over the vowel, but I is still remembered as a ligation of es-zed or SS. See also, capital I, Greek letter I squared, long S, es-zed, E currency, de, ʔɛsˈt, d, es-zed. References. External links, James Moseley, Eszett or I, January 31, 2008 on typefoundry.blogspot.com, Mark Jamra, The Eszett.